So Nick, The Eyes of Laura Mars, which is the film we're going to talk about today, has an incredibly unique, history in that most people have never heard of it. It hasn't really translated to present day, and yet, in its own way, as a failure, it is responsible for creating two of the biggest films of all time: Halloween and Empire Strikes Back.
I would have mentioned it to you because we're going to expand a little bit. I was deceiving you first when I said we should do this movie because it's kind of the phrase "all roads lead to Rome." Well, all movie research leads to this movie.
It does.
You want to talk Star Wars, Star Trek, Halloween, Child's Play, you know.
Yeah, everything is seen through the eyes, I guess, of Laura Mars. So we're going to try and use our eyes to see into the future of this episode and maybe rethink what each of us is going to say today on Kyle and Nick on Film.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Kyle. And we're here for you.
2 months before Halloween got released, this movie was playing in theaters. It's a little bit like Halloween, written by John Carpenter. It was a script doctor kind of tweaked it a little bit, but
yeah, the history behind the film is so crazy because you've got, of course, John Peters, who was a hairstylist turned Hollywood producer.
Yeah.
He'd gotten kind of a good luck charm with remaking *Star Is Born* with his girlfriend at the time, Barbra Streisand. Wanted her to be in this film as the lead. Purchased up the screenplay from John Carpenter, which was at the time just called Eyes. And then he wanted it to be less of a horror thriller and more of a romantic thriller.
Sounds like John
Peters. So, yeah, exactly. So he hired a lot of people to script doctor it. This thing went multiple permutations. Irvin Kershner said no, and then he said yes. Barbra Streisand jumped off, and then we got Faye Dunaway. Like, it saw so many different changes throughout the entirety of the time that I almost imagine if John Carpenter's name should even be on the finished film, because I don't even know if it really has anything left of what he intended.
So there's a little bit of fingerprints of John Carpenter. It's that voyeurism that's in Halloween, the looking through somebody's eyes, and really play on the male gaze. If you don't really know what a male gaze is, it's the eyeing of a male's point of view of women. That is predominantly in movies, and here John Carpenter's playing on that for the vessel of Laura Mars being telepathic and seeing the murders that are reenacting of her photography, of her pictures.
And let's I guess jump right in with Faye Dunaway as Laura Mars, because the film does hinge on her performance. I mean, because you come across all these different films where the person sees visions or sees events going on, and it can come across really cheesy or it can come across pretty strong.
This is kind of both.
I think this is kind of both. Because the catch of it that most movies don't touch on this when someone sees visions. They don't touch on the fact that you can only see the vision, so you are blind to everything else around you. And I like that this film gives a little bit more of that flavor there, in that she's driving the car at one point and she has this vision of the killer. She can't see. She's crashing into walls and stuff, which at that point, just press the brake. But I like that they tackle that as an option. While at the same time, I don't really like Faye Dunaway in the movie. I don't think she's miscast.
Because also Barbra Streisand had a song for it. It's Barbra Streisand singing for this movie.
Yep. And I think it's the only film that she sings for that she doesn't appear in.
Yeah. It almost makes you wonder what kind of movie would it be if Barbra Streisand was in it. And Barbra Streisand is like a horror movie. This is kind of a horror movie. But it's almost like glam rock horror movie. Is it a little bit? Yeah.
I heard the term disco giallo. In reference to like Suspiria and the other like Italian giallo horror films that were coming out of that time. Yeah. And this is very an Americanized look at that kind of item, and it tackles things with high fashion. The only big difference to me is that giallo has a lot more blood. It's got a lot more, like, it's got color that pops more, it's got blood, it's got a little bit more like and this film purposely drives away from any gore. And I thought that was interesting because Irvin Kershner said he didn't want to showcase the gore and the blood and the guts. And then he just has all these like incredibly graphic sexualization pieces. Right. Because I guess that fits his theme. So it's like he doesn't want to go all gross with violence, but he's like, you know.
So I would think a lot of connections, like Irvin Kershner directed Empire Strikes Back. You have Brad Dourif, who played he's a supporting role in this, but he's the voice of Child's Play. He's the voice of Chucky. He's had a wonderful career.
Yeah, he's also
over 50 years of doing movies.
Both of the Halloween remakes,
interestingly
enough, and of course got I think his biggest break. It's not fair to say it, I guess, but his biggest notable role as of recent, other than Chucky, has been as Grima Wormtongue in the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah, he was also Deadwood.
Deadwood. Oh, he's great in that. Oh, he's so good. And he just came off of an Academy Award nominated performance in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest before joining this film.
Yeah.
So you might actually say he was more famous than Tommy Lee Jones in this movie.
He was.
Jones get the higher billing and kind of the more prominent role.
And this is Faye's role after Network.
After Network as well. So it's kind of this this cosmic connective tissue that this film goes through.
Another connection, because we'll talk about it, is Michael Kahn, who edited a lot of Spielberg movies. Mm-hmm. And he edited this movie. This was kind of the borrowing of the new Hollywood of George Lucas and all of them. And in fact, a lot of the teamwork from those new Hollywood movies is kind of bled into this movie. And music composer Micah Kamen, who's done a lot of movies. So it's a spider web of connections all coming to this movie.
Yeah. So, I guess real quick, you probably know the plot, but it's basically, Faye Dunaway plays someone who's seeing through the eyes of this killer, and the killer is hunting her. And what I'd like to point out
is teasing her.
Yeah, it's kind of like she's she's intentionally the final girl. The killer wants to get her last.
Yeah. Very much John Carpenter.
Yeah, of course. There's the cat and mouse game that's being played throughout the whole thing. What I have to wonder though is, I find a real struggle with the overall character development of anyone in the forefront, because Tommy Lee Jones and Faye Dunaway, I don't really think either of their characters are written very well. They both have horrible chemistry together, and I don't think either one is really matched to their character. But what's interesting is that I really loved most of the supporting cast.
Right.
Brad Dourif. I'm gonna butcher the name, Renee Auberjonois, I believe, who played who played in Boston Legal and Star Trek. Very good character actor, and I think he is the best performance in this film, because he's having fun with the material, and it seems like he's perfectly fit into this movie.
He gets his loud parts, he gets the soft parts. He
gets his time to make a Lloyd Bridges joke.
And also Raul Julia, who's at this time is getting his feet wet, but he made marvelous career in acting, even though he gets noticed for playing Addams Family, but he has a marvelous arc of doing dramatic roles.
Yeah, it seems like the two roles he's most well known for is Gomez Addams and then the villain in Street Fighter. And it's kind of just an unfair, broad term of what he had.
And and then a lot of the supporting roles are dynamic, but even the exchanges of Raul Julia and Faye Dunaway, the scenes doesn't really click.
It's more that the film just doesn't need him. He's there, but it's easily cuttable material that doesn't seem to add much. It's only meant to make him a red herring in a film where I think their goal is to make everyone a red herring, to make you not know who it's going to be until that final reveal. But for me, about 20 minutes in, I said, and it ended up being true. And I think that's where the red herrings start to become more meaningless, is because you're not successful in making me believe.
So when you're balancing a murder mystery of people getting murdered and you're trying to figure out who it is, and you have to pump up red herrings, people get frustrated at the red herrings and they want to look at it. So if you catch the movie if you solve it before it happens, well then, and if you know the audience is going to, you're pretty much going to go gaudy with the gore to entertainment, and doesn't really have that because they took that away. So you're basically handicapping yourself. Yeah, because I think everybody in the movie knew that they're going to solve it. The audience is going to solve it before the movie does. Yeah. Before you get to the movie.
And see, that's one thing I really liked about Carpenter's original take. And I don't really think this falls into spoilers. But Carpenter's original take was not to find out who the killer was at the end, or to have it not be one of the main characters. To have it, be just something kind of reserved, because he liked the idea of a random killing force, and of course that's what we got with Halloween in a lot of ways, which is a random killing force. But it's interesting to me that he liked that idea of not having someone, and I'm usually a person who doesn't dig that a whole lot. When I first saw Black Christmas, I was angry because they don't tell you at the end of the movie who the killer was. No. And I didn't like that movie until I saw it again, knowing that information. This was one where I think the explanation they come up with is less plausible, more goofy than just not having one.
Right, and here they don't really explain why Laura Marsh is getting the visions. And that's one of my major criticisms of the movie is, well, why is she having him? How did she get him? And then the story doesn't really investigate that at all. Investigating, if you're Laura Marsh and you're getting this, you probably want to figure out why is this happening to me? Rather than trying to solve all.
It seems like they're about to do that. There's a throwaway reference to like a early 1900s event that happened like just like that, where someone was getting visions of a killer, and she just said they ended up in an insane asylum. It would have been great to delve into that mystery, delve into her past, because we get that moment too where Jones's character is showing her photos from crime scenes and then showing her photos of her own work, and she starts to realize, I've been having these visions kind of permeating my dreams for a while. And even if we end up not getting an answer to why she's getting the visions, that's a cool angle to start looking into. Is how long has she had them? Go back to childhood pictures, like do something interesting with it that really like dives into the meat of what she's suffering. I think it would have made her character better.
Cinematography is Victor J. Kempner. Who's done a lot of, in the 70s, we talk about the style is really trying to do authentic documentarian look, make it look like you're actually seeing it as it happened. He's done Dog Day Afternoon, which is really kind of that style. Slapshot is very much that style. And I would even say Clue is a little more
Clue like and Vacation. Vacation feels almost documentarian just because, maybe that's because the characters feel so lived in. Yeah. But it is kind of that feeling of you're just kind of a fly on the wall watching events unfold.
So Victor doesn't really have a unique style, but I would say that he likes to capture it almost as we're seeing it as it happens. Mm-hmm. And he does a lot of wide. There's a lot of wide scale to this. In fact, the showcase, the art gallery show, the empty warehouse, and in Faye Dunaway's room, there's a lot of wide scoping. So I do like that aspect about it, but doesn't seem to enhance the story very much.
Yeah, and I think it's wrong to say immemorable, because I don't think that's the case, but he allows the scene to unfold. Yeah. And he doesn't really try to capture you with a specific shot. Like if I think about the film now, I think only about the shots that Laura Marsh is taking. Like I think about her photography and not about any specific sequences in the film that were like memorable for how they were.
I would say, and I've seen this about 4 times. I think that one scene, the window scene, is probably the one thing that every time it brings up the movie, I'm like, yeah, that one scene. Yeah. But of course they do the slow action, which pops it out a little bit.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Usually I watch, my main criticism of the movie is everything seems to be forced. There's really no flow to it. It seems like we're going to this scene, we're going to have dynamic impacts, loud characters. We're going to the art gallery, we're going to have this develop. And it doesn't really seem like one flow the other. It seems like you could edit this, like, okay, they could put this here, interchange it, and still have the same product.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like the characters are pushing the story forward and merely just kind of stuck in a story moving. They're in the back of a taxi moving, and they're not driving it. Yeah. I agree with you in that, like, I honestly, if you put all the scenes up on a wall and asked me to organize them in the flow of the film, I can get maybe the first and the last few kind of in there, but like in the middle, there's just a lot of stuff happening that doesn't seem to drive anything. It doesn't drive additional plot developments. It doesn't drive characters forward. It doesn't really go. It just kind of, there's stuff happening.
I do think it's funny because I watched this, and this is Faye Dunaway's movie after Network, and it's almost like, oh, she was good at Network. Let's just put her on a bed again watching TV like she's at Network.
Well, if something works, it works. I mean, but that again, I don't think she was right for the movie. I don't think Tommy.
I don't think her eyes are right for a movie. If you're going to have something like Tidal and you want a female like this, you need somebody that, it's almost.
Her expression,
and then they use that for Mommy Dip
in the film. Yeah, but like she's not an actress of facial expressions in the same way. No. She seems to be an actress of cadence, of like the way that she delivers dialogue, the way that she speaks in certain tones and inflections. Hers is a more auditory performance. Yeah. It just doesn't flare on her face. No. Because she's not emoting from her face. She's emoting from her voice.
And everybody in this movie has, almost everybody. Everybody has won an Academy Award in this movie, and it just doesn't feel flowing or natural. It just seems they're just saying their lines, they're doing their parts, and all right, on to the next scene.
Yeah, and I think like for someone like Tommy Lee Jones, who again was previously, I think, a football player before he turned to acting, you can see his action capabilities. There's that chase sequence where he makes it over the fence in like a single jump, like.
Well, in the famous,
Yeah, and I think like he's capable in action. I just don't think he was meshing with the material, and you can definitely see the classic John Peters meddling. I mean, not just from, of course, the stories we know about him.
No, he's very famous for meddling, right? Yeah.
He clashed with Dunaway. I guarantee he clashed with Jones, because there's just this like losslessness. And I know he clashed with Kirshner. It just seemed to me like this is a guy who made Shampoo and made Star is Born, and then thought he could make anything he wanted. And that meddling continued through to kind of the end of his career, most famously with things like Superman Returns. Like, Peters was just like always hand in the salad, you know?
Right, and then the very famous of meddling with Caddyshack and stuff. And of course, that's probably why the art showing is probably the best captured of the movie. It's probably what John Peters is fit for and Irving Kershner's fit for. The whole glamorous and, you know, they get the gaffing right of the whole stage and atmosphere and photos and everything. It's probably the best shooting of the movie.
And I would argue that I think it's probably the overall the most memorable sequence, and it's the one I think where Kershner gets his ideas across the best. You know, when he came back to the film to finally work on it, he said it was on a few conditions. He wanted to rework the script again, and he wanted it to have its more focus on kind of a satirical look at, you know, fashion and what it does, the violence of fashion and the violence of photography towards women and beauty standards. And you know, famous review from Roger Ebert said that he tries to do this. He does not succeed, but he tries. And I do agree with that. Yeah. And I think most notably his success in the film is so far at the beginning that it kind of doesn't work through the rest of the film, but it is very strong in that opening sequence at the gallery.
This is definitely the first evolutionary step of like mixing fashion, photography, horror, and Birds of Blossom. If you really like Neon Demon, this is probably where you want to start. This is like the evolution of it. Yeah. Yeah,
and I saw little like hints of it in the film In Fabric from 2018, which is more like, you know, it's a killer dress, like, but it's definitely got that kind of like fashion beauty standards,
like Neon Demon does.
You know, fashion and photography is not always a beauty subject, and that's kind of where it hits. But this film just never really gets that point across. And part of it is in the same way that Zack Snyder's Sucker Punch, and the way that he views excessive violence towards women by using excessive violence towards women. This one kind of does the same thing as, you know, we see through the eyes of the killer. Yeah. In this one, Kershner is almost the killer. Like, he's doing the same thing as Killer's doing.
Right. And then it's like the concept is lost over the rewrites. And over to like, let's compensate for this. Let's have Faye Dunaway more. Let's people fall in love with Faye Dunaway again, rather than let's investigate the story and the chemistry.
I would much rather. This is a film that I think actually is primed for a remake, and the reason why I say that is I want someone to take Carpenter's original script and remake that, because I think it would be an interesting thing to go back to. Carpenter's known for,
which is has this, you know, it's almost like Halloween, isn't it? It's almost like it's like high fashion Halloween, right?
But I'd like to see like a real dynamic director take that screenplay exactly as it is, and really punch in some visuals and really focus in on what Carpenter wanted there. And of course, I say this as a diehard John Carpenter fan.
I know, this is the reason why I said it.
So like, you're probably just saying, "Oh, Kyle, you're just saying this because this is why I like Carpenter." But I do think his screenplay, not having read it, is probably better than the finished product.
Because we see what he's done.
He does great work on screenplays.
And definitely the other thing of melodramatic music doesn't really fit into this music, and I think John Carpenter is known for making his own music. I think if he was involved with trying to do a remake of this, or just kind of put in the oven and cook it a little more and stuff like that, and put the music that he likes into it, I think you can kick off a remake that might be more successful than this movie, even though this movie has phenomenal actors.
Yeah. It's again, I've said this before, it's kind of like putting all the right ingredients in and the souffle doesn't come out right. Like, it's nothing inherently wrong with any of these people. They've all gone in with great background.
No, it's not an awful movie. Right, we're being harsh to it. It's not an awful movie.
The film is merely fine. And that's kind of its biggest problem, is that it's not bad enough to make it like fun to hate on, but it's not good enough to be memorable. And that's kind of why the film isn't talked about today, and why I think it's primed for remakes. I think remakes should come from films that have great ideas that didn't work, instead of great movies that just aren't going to get any better.
And I like, if you like Halloween, this is fascinating stuff, because this movie came out 2 months before Halloween. This came out in the summer of 1979, and Halloween got all the accolades, which it should. It's in. This is kind of what, well, let's investigate further, because everybody's like, I'm a huge John Carpenter fan. Have you seen The Eyes of Laura Marsh? No, I never heard of it.
It makes you wonder if the film would have been more successful 2 months after Halloween, because then they could have maybe marketed it as the screenwriter of Halloween. Although that might have also encouraged some Carpenter's lawsuits or something too, because he probably was. I know he was very unhappy with them meddling with his work. Yeah, I know, right? What? But it came out of the idea that Carpenter wanted to write and direct this film himself, and he had just come off of the underwhelming Dark Star, one of only 2 Carpenter films I'm not a big fan of. And then he wrote Assault on Precinct 13 and Eyes, and he wanted to direct both of them. Ended up only getting one because he needed some more money. So that kind of brings me to this whole idea of
what would
Halloween would not have existed without this film, because the minimal budget that Halloween has, a good chunk of that came from the sale of this screenplay. And then you also have The Empire Strikes Back, which George Lucas asked Irvin Kershner to direct Empire Strikes Back after watching a rough cut of this movie. So while this film is not successful in the sense that it's not a very memorable movie, it's not particularly great, it gave us 2 of the greatest films of all time.
And that's why I said Will Deceiving wasn't really true on it, but Kyle, it's a very important step for where everybody involved goes after this movie.
This is the prism in the Pink Floyd
right, yeah.
But yeah,
even from the crew to the cast of after this movie of where everybody goes after this.
Yeah, it's just all around best of intentions, mediocre product. So for me,
I want to say it's not. And once again, I want to say it's not a great movie, but it's not bad. But I've seen this more than once, and you don't want to stop. It's enjoyable.
For me, it never hits the point where I feel like it does anything better than any other film that's attempted. There's nothing that really stands out except for that one great idea of let's actually show the fact that she can't see when she's having these visions. Because we never see that in these kinds of movies. They have a vision. It's almost like when you dream and they say a dream takes a quarter of a second to get into your brain. That's kind of how they play it in most other films. This one, they actually let her live it and breathe it, which is what you'd be doing if you're seeing through the eyes of a killer.
So it's not a strong recommendation, but I think if you want to know, if you really want to investigate or research movie history, it's an important movie to know and be on your radar to have a discussion.
I don't fault anyone for liking it. For me, I can't recommend it because there's a better film that came out 2 months later with a lot of the bare bones of this. There's more successful outings of these kinds of movies. But if you're looking for a piece of film history, there's a lot in Eyes of Laura Marsh.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely for me, it's kind of I can't really recommend it, but I won't fault you if you liked it.
Yeah. So, let us know. Have you seen The Eyes of Laura Marsh? What do you think of it? I've definitely...
definitely let us know, because this is one of those... We love talking movies that are kind of last season we talked Casablanca, and we like talking the big movies and then some of these smaller hidden gems too. And this is one that I think it's worth hunting around for, at least if you're looking to broaden your film standards, especially as a Carpenter fanboy. But I want to know what you thought about it. Drop your comments down below. Let us know if the ending worked for you, because for me, a lot of the changes that came out of this film were changes in the script that people criticized after the film came out. So I want to know if those things...
No, they knew it wasn't going to work, so they had to do that one... Yeah. They knew it wasn't going to work, so
we want to know your thoughts on all the craziness that ensues with the rest of this film, and things you liked, things you didn't like. Let us know in the comment section down
below. I do like
the
fashion, though.
Oh, yeah. I will never wear it because, I already pull off this pretty well. But don't forget, too, to give us a like if you enjoyed this content. You have no idea how much it helps us in the algorithms on YouTube and getting kind of the video out there. We really just appreciate it as well. And if you want to get our new content, every week we have new episodes dropping. Subscribe. It's a simple click and it'll take you no time at all to be informed every single time we have a new episode. And the great thing is, if you want to be involved, if you want us to talk about films that are like Laura Marsh or not like Laura Marsh, join the Patreon, and then you can have a say in everything we talk about. You can help us pick themes that we're going to do every month. Starting with this season, we're going to be coming in with a new theme in April. You can help pick those themes. You can help pick the movies we talk about just by joining us there. Patreon.com/Kyle Nick on Film. The link is down in the description. Nick, where can we find it?
You can find the St. Paul Filmcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you find your podcasts.
You can find all my film reviews on GoatFilmReviews.com. We just hit the 1,000 mark. It's insane. Oh my fingers are tired. But we really appreciate you guys over there as well. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And until next time,